Hi, in this lecture we will cover behaviorism, which is an interesting school of psychology because it assumes that humans are rational all the time and can be taught anything. And this is because they see the human mind as a computer that just needs the right input to produce the right output. The way you can think about this is that your mind is empty, and it needs to be filled by learnings and experiences from the external world. So according to the behaviorists, there is no deep unconscious or deep childhood traumatic experiences that influence your behavior, as Freud would say, but they essentially just argue that your mind is empty, and what you encounter in the world and what you learn in the world is what comprises of your personality and your experience. So this is a very useful theory, for example, for therapies, because these types of therapies look at what you have learned, and then they try to unlearn your habits, for example. The first kind of key concept of behaviorism is learning associations or classical conditioning, which is a term coined by Pavlov, and you might have heard about him. He did the famous experience with dogs, and he taught the dogs to salivate when they heard the bell. And this is exactly what it is. You can form associations between things in the world because the dogs have associated the sound of the bell with the food coming in. So let's look at an example from practice. Let's say you do poor work at the workplace. So you feel frustration because if you miss a deadline, your work isn't very thorough, your boss might not look at you very well, you might feel bad about yourself, and that produces frustration, which is something you don't want to be experiencing. And then let's say, a new colleague comes in. So you have a neutral reaction to this colleague because you don't know who he or she is. You're kind of cautious around them, and you just are still figuring him or her out. But then, as the year goes by, you start working with this colleague, and you notice that whenever you do a project with him or her, the deadline is not met, the work is not very thorough, it's not very conscientious, it's not very well done. So you experience frustration every time you work with this person. And this happens a few times throughout the year maybe. And then when you just see the colleague, you just feel frustration when you see him or her because you have associated this colleague with not doing his work very well, which is associated with frustration, and that's why you feel this kind of sentiment towards him. And this is a really basic principle, a very basic principle of behaviorism. The second one is learning through reinforcement, which is known as operant conditioning. And these two concepts, positive and negative reinforcements, say that you shape your behavior or you learn by the results of your actions. So let's look at positive reinforcement. Let's say you work hard at the workplace. Let's say you pull your weight, you always meet the deadline, and you're very thorough, and everything goes well for you, or your work goes well for you. And your boss notices that, and he praises you, and you feel good. You maybe have a promotion in mind, and you just feel generally nice and happy. So you work hard to be praised in the future because you've learned that if you work hard, good things will happen to you. So you kind of see the reward in it. On the other hand, negative reinforcement works in an opposite way. Let's say you're lazy and you don't work very hard. You kind of you miss the deadlines, and the work you submit is not of a very high standard, and you get criticized. And obviously, being criticized is not nice because your self-esteem goes down. You don't feel valued at the workplace. You feel like you can't do the job properly, which doesn't feel good. Nobody wants to be feeling this way. So you start working hard to not get criticized, because you've learned that if you do not work hard and if you're lazy, something bad is going to happen to you. So the key difference between positive and negative reinforcement is that the positive, you do according to positive reinforcement, you do stuff to get a reward, and according to negative reinforcement, you do something to avoid something bad happening to you, like being criticized or feeling frustrated or feeling bad about yourself. Another key point is that you don't have to directly experience these things, but you can learn these associations and learn these reinforcements and results and rewards and punishments by just observing others. So let's say your colleague is lazy, you see him get criticized, and according to the behaviorist perspective, that should be enough to make you work harder as well, because you see that being lazy and not working well leads to something bad or something unfavorable happening to people around you. And that is the behaviorist perspective in a nutshell. Thank you for listening.